evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting for March the 25th, 2025 for the City of Elizabethtown. My name is Steve Rice. I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission. We do have an agenda this evening. We'll be going over that. It's actually on the board there for a minute. Before we get started on the agenda items, I'm going to introduce the folks in front of you. On the far end, that's not seated yet, is Matt Hess. He's our legal counsel. He is not a voting member. Next, we have Kyle Solarette, Mr. Ken Dozer, Casey McQuarrie, and myself are all voting members. We have a member absent this evening. And at the very end, we have Micah Richardson, who is Tyler, excuse me, I'll get it right here in a minute. Tyler is with us this evening representing the City Council. So, in the back of the room we have Madeline Drake, who's the planner, along with Aaron Hawkins, and then in the blue jacket is Joe Reverman. So, again, welcome this evening. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes for our March the 11th meeting in 2025. Commissioners, you've had a chance to get those in advance. I'll entertain any corrections or motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Have a motion made and a second. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, I'll now call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let the record show the vote was 4-0. The next item of business is the amended development plan with commercial design review for Dixie Business Center Phase 3 location at 1034 Executive Drive. I'm going to turn that over to, excuse me. Is there a different stress on that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. 4601 North Dixie Avenue. I apologize. I'll turn it over to staff.
So Dixie Business Center at 4601 North Dixie Avenue is owned by TDA Properties. It is 12.4 acres and the current use is a business center. All they're proposing to do is increase the number of business center buildings from 2 to 12. So it's almost one of the very last parcels in the city limits of North Dixie. It is right below. See right there is the treasure chest, there's some storage buildings, here is the bowling alley, and then this road right here is North Dixie. This is located in the C4 General Service Commercial Zone. The original building on site, which is the one to the right of the sign there, was the Bowling Lanes Flea Market. And it was converted to business center or contractors' offices in 2020. At that time, contractors' offices were not required to go through the commercial design review process. They now are, but since that wasn't a requirement at the time, they were constructed with materials that we typically would not approve for a commercial building. And so when they brought their second building to the commission in 2023, I think, you all approved some waivers to allow them to keep the same materials, which are metal siding, and kind of like a flat roof line. There were only variations within the facade depth, just to allow them to all have the same appearance. So this lot has been platted. The original building on site was constructed in 1983 as a Bowling Lanes Flea Market, and the property was annexed into the city in 1992. And then in 2020, you all approved the map amendment for the site, one from C3 to C4, approved the development plan, commercial design reviews, and in June of 2023, the commission approved the development plan for phase 2 of the second building, and granted the commercial design review waivers for materials and colors, facades, and exterior walls, and roofs to allow the new building to have the same appearance as the phase 1 building. Staff does recommend approval of the commercial design review and requesting waivers and the development plan with conditions. So these are just some on-site pictures of the existing buildings and the site. Right there is just when you come off the entrance off North Dixie, and then once you get inside a little bit, here is the building one from the west side, so the rear of the property. And then building 2 from the west side, you can also see a little bit of the jump strength elevations with all of the materials, same as previously approved. The building number proposes to match the existing buildings on site in both appearance, materials, and use. Each building unit is 25 by 30. So like some of the buildings have 3 units, 4 units, 5. Like the biggest one has like 10 or 12. 2 of the proposed buildings will have 3 units, 1 will have 4, 6 buildings will have 5 units, and 1 building will have 6 units. I think the 2 existing buildings have 12 units each. The top part of each structure is proposed to be red vertical metal panels, which are fox gray in color. The canvas awnings will be located above each entrance to provide articulation and depth to the front facades. So those canvas awnings can be seen in these pictures. They're just like what is on the existing buildings, kind of over each entryway, customer entryway. The development plan shows 1 customer entrance per unit on the front facade of each building, 2 side entrances off of North Dixie Avenue. Actually, I'm sorry, that's also on this site. There is 1 entrance to the site proposed off of North Dixie Avenue. They are intending to have shared access at some point off of South Wilson Road with the site there. The address is in the condition. Yeah, 6796 South Wilson Road, I think currently is the Helping Hands of Hope building. They do intend to work out some kind of proposed shared access agreement in the future, but at this time they're only going to have access off of 160. And the state's fine with that, so they can have a list and everything. A landscape plan will continue to strike pedestrian access across the parking lot and multiple areas has been provided. Continuous hedgerow shown between all pavement and the property line inside a landscape buffer along with 1 tree every 100 lineal feet of street frontage will be approved prior to development and certification. And here we have some aerial imagery that was given to us by the applicant, kind of a better view of both the existing buildings. They are requesting 3 waivers. 1 for chapter 154.134A1, materials and colors. 1 for chapter 154.134B2, facades and exterior walls. And 1 for chapter 154.134, section D2, roofs. So the staff analysis for the waivers are there are special circumstances with the requested waivers because the first building was not required to go through commercial design review, and the second building was granted these exact waivers in order to match the appearance of the first. The proposed building will be of better quality in both design and appearance with the adjacent residential storage metal buildings to the north and the block bowling alley to the south. The North Dixie sub-area 2 guidelines, which is what this is located in, say that underutilized properties impact the character of the community, pose safety issues if abandoned, and reduce the property tax revenue generated. As a flea market, the site was underutilized and negatively impacted the character of the community. This developer is developing a site to enhance one of the most modern parcels in the city. The guidelines further state that some flexibility on the unmoored uses could be considered that complement or are compatible with additional commercial use. Staff recommends approval of the commercial design guideline review and the requested waivers for section 154.134A1, materials and colors, section 154.134B2, facades and exterior walls, and section 154.134B2, 2 conditions. The development plan and landscape plan, commercial design guideline review and snow plan, development plan has 2 conditions. The development plan and landscape plan were filed as part of the requirements for commercial design review. These plans have been reviewed by all local departments and jurisdictions and are in compliance. For the development plan review, staff recommends approval of the development plan with the following conditions. 1 is that no access shall be permitted to South Wilson Road until such time as access is shared and combined with 6796 South Wilson Road. And 2 is that the applicant will work with staff to finalize the landscape plan to comply with the requirements of the Elizabethtown zoning ordinance.
Does the commission have any questions of staff in the presentation?
Was there any discussion with the applicant about having the new buildings that are connecting to 31W or South Wilson to have a little stricter of design review since they will be facing roads? Or is it just assumed because we didn't do the first one, we just do that with the next 12?
You mean the two smaller buildings that'll be facing
The two smaller ones that are visible from 31W and then the two that are visible from South Wilson?
so there hasn't been any discussion on changing the materials or the design of the buildings, although they will be required to have more landscaping around them just because they're facing a street and they're gonna have like, a tree every 100 linear feet, and we're also gonna require some extra landscaping around the buildings themselves.
And staff will take care of the enhanced landscaping request, or?
Yeah, they're working with us on submitting a new, or a better landscape plan.
And then is there a time related to the waiver of the, or the requested waiver for the access to South Wilson Road? Does that need to be done within a year? It just seems really loose right now.
There's no waiver for the access, that's just a condition of our approval of this development plan. So when you approve this development plan, you're not approving it with an access to South Wilson Road. If they want an access to South Wilson Road, they don't necessarily have to come back and do another development plan, I don't think.
Not to the commission.
Right, but they will need to, submit that to us. They'll need to record something with the clerk's office and then also let us know that that's what they're doing. And they'll have to let us say that as well, since that's.
But for connectivity purposes, you all want them to connect to South Wilson, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, especially since all of that property is now being annexed as of the last few.
Yes, that,
I know Helping Hand Folks already been annexed and
the church on the other side, I don't think has
it has
had any interest in being annexed. Yeah, on the other, like, this is Helping Hand, this is a church that's in the county. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I don't think they intend to be annexed.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, I think staff's found that the state's not going to allow them to have another access, so they've got to work it out.
they would have to share both.
Yeah, they're never gonna have their
And
own
they
separate
never done
access.
that.
It would be far too close to the.
I think that's maybe the whole.
But there's nothing the city can do to force that adjoining property owner to agree to that
No.
shared access.
No. I have to agree with that. Yeah, that's correct. Any other questions on the proposal?
So on the color, I know we've got a waiver for material and colors, but we're specifically talking about materials here. The colors are within the palette.
Yeah, the colors,
Materials.
that's one section in the commercial design guidelines, it's materials and colors, so it's kind of all in one little paragraph, but the colors are acceptable, it's just the metal side of it.
I think what we have here in this situation is when we approved the first one, there was no standards they had to follow.
Correct.
And since then, we've created a standard. They came in with the second one, said we're going to do the same thing, and now they come back with this one, and that's kind of where we are. So if they were doing it today, it would look a little different if they were doing the whole thing, but that's kind of where we are with this particular one. Any other questions on the presentation of the staff that the commission has? Before I'll ask for action, I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience has any questions about what we're considering in this particular instance? We kind of opened that up sometimes to our audience if you have any questions. Okay. Commission, we need to take these separately. I'll entertain a motion for the commercial design review first. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that for property located at 4601 North Dixie Avenue, that we approve the commercial design guideline review of the requested waivers for section 154.134A1 materials and colors, section 154.134B2 facades and exterior walls, and section 154.134D2 roofs with no conditions.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second? We have a motion made and a second. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Let the record show the vote is 4-0 to approve. Now the development plan.
Make a motion to approve the development plan for the property of 4601 North Dixie, as presented with the two waivers, with the two conditions, that no access will be permitted on South Wilson Road until such time that the access is shared with violation 6796 South Wilson,
motion made in a second. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let the record show the vote was 4-0. Thank you. The next item of business is a public hearing, 2025 PC05. It's a zoning map amendment from C3 to R6 with a development plan and sidewalk waiver for location at 475 Hodgenville Road. What we're about to do now with the public hearing is different than what you just heard. So on the screen there is the order of the services, that the order that will be taking presentation. And also we're going to have a recording play for you that kind of explains this process. And then at the end of that, if you are, and by the way, there are other hearings after this, so if you would, when we get to the part of the swearing in, I'll ask Mr. Hess to swear in anyone who's going to make any testimony or presentation, okay? So if you want to play the recording.
This evening's agenda includes one or more public hearings for a zoning map or text amendment. Because this is a public hearing, it is being recorded. The following procedure must be followed so everyone has an opportunity to be heard. Each public hearing will begin with the chairperson announcing the request and opening that public hearing. Staff will present an analysis of the request and a recommendation. The commission members may ask questions of staff. The applicant or a representative will present the request and any information he or she deems relevant. The commission members may ask questions of the applicant or representative. Anyone else in favor of the request will be allowed to speak next. Then, anyone in opposition to the request will be allowed to speak. Anyone who does not want to speak in favor or in opposition, but wants to ask questions, may do so last. After everyone has voiced their opinion or asked questions, the applicant or representative will be allowed to return to the podium to address any issues that were raised and answer any questions. When all comments have been made and questions answered, the public comment period will be closed and the commission will deliberate. No additional comments can be made by anyone in the audience unless it is in response to a question from the commission. After completing its deliberation, the commission will take action. It has the option of tabling the request to allow time to gather additional information. However, in most cases, the commission will make a recommendation to either approve or deny the request. The recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council, which will make the final decision. That decision is based on the record of the hearing held here tonight. The City Council will not take additional testimony, and it is not appropriate for anyone to discuss a public hearing request with the mayor or City Council members. Your participation is important to the decision-making process. If you want to speak, please do so from the podium so everyone can hear and your comments can be recorded. The chairperson will not allow questions or comments unless they are made from the podium. To maintain order, a dialogue between the applicant, members of the audience, staff, and/or commission members will not be permitted. Each person must speak during their designated period unless in response to a question from the commission. Anyone who thinks they may speak during the public hearing, even if it is only to ask a question, must take an oath. If a large number of people are in attendance, the chairperson has the right to limit the amount of time each speaker is allotted. The chairperson may also limit testimony that is determined to be irrelevant to the request or is repetitious. Your attendance at this hearing is appreciated. If you have not done so, please sign the register.
Are there any questions about the procedure we're about to follow? Remember just a couple of things. When the time comes time to make a comment, you're going to go to the podium, state your name and address for the record, okay? There'll be different times to do different things, as you can see there. This time I'm going to call on our attorney, Matt Hess, to swear people in at this time.
So if you plan on making comments or asking questions at any of the public hearings tonight, I'd like for you to take the oath. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give before this body will be the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to staff.
So we have a zoning map amendment. This is PC 2025 PC 05. The applicant is requesting a change in zoning from C3 regional commercial to R6 high density residential. They have also submitted a development plan for Roanoke Apartments and a sidewalk waiver request. The applicant is Brady Stewart. The owner of the property is Roanoke Company LLC. This address is 475 being greater than 1 acre in size, water following measures will be required. Stormwater will be directed to the regional detention basin on the abutting lot to the northeast, which is this little corner piece right there. It's owned by the same owner as this lot, and all of these surrounding lots in the subdivision direct their stormwater to that. This property was originally platted as Lot 7 of Roanoke Crossings, Section 3 in 2020, and was later amended to Lot 7B in January 2022, and again to Lot 7E in November 2022. This property has been vacant since its platting. Map amendment and development plan applications were submitted in February of 2023 for this exact same development, but were withdrawn as the applicant decided to wait until the city's improvement project for sewer infrastructure in this area were complete. I believe that was the Hopkins Drive infrastructure plan. Staff recommends approval of the zoning map amendment from C3 regional commercial to R6 high density residential, as it is found to be in compliance with the community-wide development policy and guidelines, sub-area guidelines, and targeted planning area guidelines of the Elizabeth County Comprehensive Plan. Now, per state law, we must notify the public of public hearings in 3 ways. Our department will post a sign on this property, 2 actually, one off of Quadrangle Road and one off of Lincoln. We sent those to the News Enterprise, and we sent those to all adjoining property owners via first class mail. Shown is a list of all property owners who were notified by mail and outlined of those adjoining properties afterwards. So all the ones outlined in green were notified of this public hearing and zoning amendment proposal. The Envision Elizabeth Town 2020 comprehensive plan lays out a 5-step process for determining whether a map amendment proposal complies with the comprehensive plan. For each step, staff does a separate analysis. For step 1, this step reviews policies that are applicable to new construction and redevelopment throughout the city. A list of all policies can be found in the plan. The following policies are applicable to this request. Emphasis on reuse and development of existing parcels and structures versus development of vacant undeveloped or unplatted parcels. The size and scale of all development and redevelopment should reflect the character and style of surrounding uses, regardless of the nature and desirability of the particular project. Access points to all public roadways should be defined and minimized. Development should be interconnected in order to minimize traffic conflicts and provide alternative access points and routes for traffic flow. New development should only occur in areas where water and sewer services are available to public agencies and can meet additional demand. And new development should only occur where there is adequate water supply and pressure filter protections for the protection services. Staff's analysis of step 1 was that the size and scale of the multifamily development will be compatible with nearby commercial developments and multifamily units in the residential developments to the east. Access to the property will come from 2 points off an existing private street. Water and sewer are available on the property, and water supply and pressure are adequate for the proposed development. Step 2 of the 5-step process encompasses determines compliance with the comprehensive plan. Property subject to development proposal should be located on the recommended land use map to identify the sub-area in which it's located, the recommended land use map for this property, and whether it's considered to be in a transition area. So this property is in southeast quadrant sub-area 12, and it is in a transition area between land use classifications. The recommended land use map designates this property as regional commercial, which is intended for commercial uses serving a larger community or regional needs for goods and services. This classification is applied to areas with high traffic capacities and high visibility that are conducive to commerce, as well as being applied to areas where the existing infrastructure necessary to accommodate this type and scale of commercial uses in place. The property lies in a transition area between the general service, commercial, and regional industrial land uses to the north and south, and the urban residential land use to the east. The recommended land use map designates the property as regional commercial. Multifamily residential is compatible with and supports adjacent and nearby commercial developments. provide an adequate transition from adjacent commercial uses to nearby residential uses. Compliance with the community-wide guidelines. This step builds upon step 1 by providing more detailed direction for development. It focuses on redevelopment, scale, and transition between land uses. A list of all guidelines can be found in a comprehensive plan. The following guidelines are applicable to this request. Redevelopment emphasis. The requested zoning map amendment for residential zoning classification would allow appropriate development of an existing city lot that has public services, including water, sewer, and gas nearby. Scale and density. The size and scale of a high-density multifamily development would be compatible with nearby commercial developments and nearby residential developments. Transition between land uses. The development provides a transition from the intense commercial and industrial uses along Lincoln Parkway and Hawkins Drive to the residentially zoned properties to the east. Access management and vehicular activity. Development of the lot would utilize an existing street network which provides adequate and appropriate connectivity. Pedestrian connectivity. A sidewalk will be required to be constructed along the developer's portion of Edwards Street with connections to the development and walkways connecting all buildings within the development. Utilities. Water and sewer are available on the property with sufficient capacity. Then we get to step 4, compliance with the sub-area guidelines. This step provides guidelines that are more specific to the sub-area in which the property is located. This property is not in a transition area, so here is the sub-area or for the recommended land use map, and then there's the targeted planning area land use map. The development provides a transition from the intense commercial and industrial uses along Lincoln Parkway and Hawkins Drive to the residentially zoned properties to the east, the orange sections to the east. And the subject property is not within the target planning area. So, our staff findings are in your packet. For development plan analysis, the development plan with the required landscaping has been submitted as an exhibit for the zone change request. The plan has been reviewed by all required utilities and departments and is in compliance with the Elizabethtown zoning ordinance with the exception of the requirement for sidewalk installation along Hodgenville Road and Lincoln Parkway. The applicant is requesting a waiver for the sidewalk installation requirement. So in the sidewalk waiver, as part of the waiver request, the applicant shall have burden of proof to show that there will be no adverse impact upon the neighborhood or general area by the granting of the waiver and granting a waiver. Commission has several things to consider. Staff's analysis of those considerations were that the natural topography and vegetation pre-existing the proposed project along Hodgenville Road prevent installation of functional sidewalk. There is a 30-foot topographic drop from the edge of the tree line of this property to Hodgenville Road. Lincoln Parkway is a 4-lane controlled access highway with limited pedestrian activity, and it also transitions into the Western Kentucky Parkway, just up north of here, which is not allowed to have sidewalks. The steep grade of the area along Hodgenville Road is an exceptional topographic condition that makes installation of the sidewalk infeasible. The location of Lincoln Parkway's transition into the sidewalk extended right-of-way, the Western Kentucky Parkway being just 1,200 feet west of this property's Lincoln Parkway frontage, means that any sidewalk installed on this property's frontage would never have a connection to the west. Staff recommends approval of the development plan requested waiver for conditions.
Any questions of staff?
Just for clarification for the audience on this, on the sidewalk waiver that's being recommended, the property owner will pay into the funds, correct?
Yes.
And the portion that's along Lincoln Parkway that's not required, that still counts towards the total amount, correct? Even though they will.
They're still technically required to install a sidewalk along Lincoln Parkway, and they're required to install a sidewalk along Hodgenville Road. The analysis was just that going past this property line, it will never connect to the west because you can't have a sidewalk on the Western Lincoln Parkway.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you. Any questions of the audience of staff? what you heard so far? No? Okay. At this particular time, then, if the applicant wishes to come forward and make a presentation, they're welcome to do that. State your name and address for the record, please.
Nick Perglasco, Barber, Talbot Roberts, 1000 First Spring Parkway, Louisville, Kentucky, 40223. I'm here with Derek Triplett with Land Design and Development. Derek and I handle cases like this all around the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I don't think I've ever had a presentation staff as thorough as this one. So we have a presentation that I'd be happy to show to you with this. I also don't want to maybe reiterate or go over the exact same thing that was already provided. So I way defer to the extent there are questions. I'm happy to answer it. Or I'd also be happy to go through quickly our presentation either way.
If it's something different than what we've had, we'd like to hear it, obviously. Be available for questions also from the commission as well.
Sure. It's not truly different, but I can happy to use that here through the presentation. I can.
Maybe breeze through, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'll go very quickly through it. If you do these options, I can do that as well. I have a printout copies in addition. If not, I can handle this. It may help with going quick. Okay, well then, so we had a good attended our presentation for this afternoon, so granted I loaded it, I won't go through much of the detail. Most of everything we have in here was exactly what was shown at the original presentation. The main thing, this is a down zoning from C3 to R6. It is in an area that where it will be well buffered from neighbors. Ogdenville Road has a grade change, significant grade change there, as well as trees that would be preserved along there. And it would be a very nice development, very nice being a 288 unit apartment complex. It has all the amenities you normally see, not normally see, because it has, in addition to clubhouse and pool, but also include a car wash as well as pickleball courts. But it would be a very nice development, and it is a trend that we're seeing throughout the jurisdictions we work, as mentioned, is that having more multifamily in areas very close to retail to help support those services, as to whether it be grocery or big box retail, any of that, having more residences close just helps support those uses as well. And that as far as we would have sidewalks fully internal to the site. You can see one of the slides that I have there shows all the sidewalks that would be along our frontage on would be Edward Street, but also internal to the site. And then we do have our extension that would be just off site as part of the larger development overall with that. The other thing with this is the site has over 400,000 square feet of open space, significantly more open space than impervious surface. So as a result, that's why on the color plane you see a lot of green. That's because there is a lot of green as far as the open space with that. And then I won't go through the staff's analysis on the comp plan because that was very thoroughly done as part of this initiative as well. If you don't mind, I can ask Derek, see if there's anything that I left out, and have him fill in any gaps, and then we can take any questions that you may have.
Okay, state your name and address, please.
Derek Triplett, Land Design and Development, 503 Washburn Avenue, Louisville, Kentucky 40222. Nick really hit on a lot of the high points, but just to dive a little bit more into the layout, those of you that are familiar with the site know there are some topographic challenges on the property, and some of that was mentioned in the staff report. And so what we've done is we've built on the flatter portions of the site. you have the existing access point that comes off of Lincoln Parkway, that will end directly into our proposed entrance. It's a boulevarded entrance with a planted landscape median in the middle, with a terminus view of the clubhouse and the formal open space areas. 6,000 square foot clubhouse, so a relatively large clubhouse, pool, patio area, playground, and pickleball. Other amenities spotted throughout the property. You've got a dog park over here and another sort of formal open space, and then just the edges of the property being maintained as open space and also maintaining as much of the tree canopy as possible along Hodgenville Road. So that's really the plan in a nutshell. I think we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Commissioner, you have any questions?
Did you have dumpster sites proposed anywhere? I may have just missed them on the
We
plan.
have compactor. That's located
Where is that?
right.
Oh, right, okay. Right across the road there. Okay, good.
And these will be what, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, I assume, apartments at this point?
Correct. I don't know if we have the exact unit mix determined at this point. It'll be in that market, but
Okay. Any other questions? Audience, you have any questions for the developers here in this project? All right, very good, thank you. At this time, if there's anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak in favor of the consideration we're having this evening on this particular hearing, now is your time to come to the podium and make a presentation. Seeing none, then I'm going to shift. Is there anyone here that wishes to make a presentation not in favor of the consideration for the hearing? Now's your time to come forward and state your name and address and make your presentation. Going once. I don't see any, so at this particular time, I'm going to close the presentation, testimony of the hearing, and I'm going to divert back to the commission to deliberate on discussion and or what action you would like to take here, or even comments, so.
I think I've been working in step with the city on this one, just for the simple fact to have the sewer built out and the anticipated growth coming out there, so I applaud that.
It's like you maximized what you could possibly do on a piece of property. That's pretty impressive what you've been able to do with that. I think it would be a great addition to that end of town. Any other commission comments or thoughts?
I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a well thought out development. I like the fact that it still has green space to it, to where the density it's not so dense that it is not visibly appealing.
Yeah, in some way, the topographicalness of the site plays in its favor of segregating it out in a good way. You know, it's not just right in the middle of, somebody, either the racetrack's backyard or any other, the adjoining property owners. It can be somewhat, in a good way in this case, separated off in that way, so. And, it's like 15 units an acre, so it's not as dense as, the zoning, I guess, would allow it to be.
Did a good job of parking too, I think, based on how many units are going to be there, so. If there's no other comments, I'll entertain the motion. If somebody'd like to make one.
Regarding, or were you going, sorry? Regarding,
Yeah, let's do several ones.
regarding public hearing 2025 PC 05, I recommend, or I make a motion that we recommend to the Elizabethtown City Council the rezoning of this location from C3 Regional Commercial to R6 High Density Residential based on the 6 findings of fact presented by staff.
Have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any question on the motion? Seeing none, I now call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let the record show the vote was 4-0. Next motion.
Make a motion for property located at 475 Hodgenville Road, that we approve the development plan and request waivers with no conditions.
Motion made, do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any question on the motion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let the record show the vote was 4-0. At this time, I will close public hearing 2025 PC05. There will be no other comments on this, and this will be sent forward to the City Council for consideration at their next meeting. The next item of business is public hearing 2025 PC06. It's a zoning amendment from R1 to R6 and C3 with conceptual development plan location at 707 St. John Road. I'm now going to turn it over to staff.
Planning Commission members, we've got an issue was perhaps discovered with notice with regard to one nearby or adjacent property owner. It was just discovered today, and we had this hearing here. People are here, some from out of town. So we may have to deal with this notice issue to one property owner by continuing the hearing to a different date to make sure we have proper notice to him. My recommendation, I believe we have the ability to do this, is to proceed with testimony hearing. We have a large number of people here from the public. We have the applicant here. Hear what we can tonight in terms of testimony and evidence. And then table this for our next available meeting when we can provide notice to that one adjoining owner. And if staff could remind me the name of the adjoining owner, just to check, double check that person's not here.
Yeah, hang on a second. It is Thomas and
Wisniewski,
Wisniewski, Dominica. Yeah, we didn't notice them on the sign.
but they haven't signed it yet. So, and just so the public understands, a lot of y'all got notice. We had an issue with this one property owner. We want to have a hearing that's adequate under state law, and we can divide a hearing between two meetings. So to make the best use of everybody's time, we're going to hear from the people who are here tonight, and then we're probably going to continue this hearing to a future date to allow some notice to that property owner. We would not then repeat everything we've done tonight. That would be the intention. We'd cover what we can cover tonight. We wouldn't have a full application presentation again at a future meeting, but at that future meeting there would be deliberation by, or an opportunity for that person to be heard, and deliberation, and then a decision. So that's my advice on how to proceed tonight, Mr. Chairman, given what we discovered today. So with that being said, I think it's okay for the staff to go ahead with their presentation, hear from the applicant, hear from the public.
Commission members, do you all understand what's been presented? So we're going to go through this as is until we get to the point we can't take any action on it. So that's pretty much where we are. So everybody understand? Okay. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thanks, Chairman Rice. All right, so this is PC or 2025 PC06 at 707 St. John Road. The applicant is Hannah Green. It is a request to change the zoning from R1 suburban residential to R6 high density residential and C3 regional commercial. So a split zone for this property. Current use is a single family residential property use, and they are proposing a mixed use development. As you can see, it is in the central part of the city, central western portion of the city, just off the northwest corner of the Elizabethtown 31W bypass and St. John Road. Closer look at the property in question tonight outlined. The red portion outlined is where the regional commercial zoning would take place. Excuse me. And the yellow portion is where the R6 high density residential zoning would take place if approved. Again, it is on the northwestern corner essentially of the 31W bypass and St. John Road. There is one piece of property between that and the bypass. That property is in a floodplain. Let me point that out. So we already had a discussion about an adjoining property owner, but this is the list of adjoining property owners that did receive notification. And because this is a public hearing, we also enter into the record the Elizabethtown Comprehensive Plan, Envision Elizabethtown 2040, the city zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, the application that we received with all attachments. We did receive a conceptual development plan for this development. That is the exhibit that the applicant is using. We also posted notice on site, as well as posting a notice in the News Enterprise publication, as well as posting notice on the city's website. That is a visual of the adjoining property owners that did receive notice. And then a couple of viewpoints of the property, one from St. John Road and one from the house looking back towards St. John Road. So again, this is a request to change the zoning to allow a mixed-use development. This is the conceptual development plan that was submitted as the exhibit on the screen before you. The current R1 zoning does not allow commercial or multifamily as a principal use. Therefore, the applicant is requesting the change in zoning. The applicant is proposing to convert their existing single-family house and residence into a clubhouse for the development, as well as adding multiple hotel buildings, a commercial strip development, and multifamily buildings. So this conceptual development does show, the elimination of the existing entrance to this single-family use, and then proposing to construct a roundabout on St. John Road to allow access into this development. That will be the single access for this development. Will come off of this roundabout and utilize that roundabout. There is a proposed fourth leg on the roundabout that will not be constructed at this time. And you can see that on the western or the side of the screen. So initially this would be a three-leg roundabout for the east-west St. John Road connection or through Fair, and then the north connection into the development. Adjacent properties are zoned R1 and R2. The property to the north is the Deerfield Hills subdivision and a single-family residential property. Property to the west is utilized as either single-family residential or vacant. And the property east is agricultural. And then to the south, across St. John Road, is property owned by the Central Kentucky Community Foundation. In terms of utilities, utilities are available to the site, and there is sufficient capacity for this development. I do want to point out that with this lot being greater than 1 acre in size, they will be required to follow the city stormwater ordinance and provide water quality measures. However, that stormwater will be handled at the development plan stage. So conceptual development plans just show general locations, potential stormwater retention basins or detention basins, but they do not submit plans to the stormwater department until we get to the actual development plan stage. A little background about this property. It was originally platted as a future development subdivision of the Meadowwood subdivision in 1991. It was later amended to its current boundaries in 1995, and the property again was further amended in 2006 to remove the future development tract designation and make this a buildable lot. So after becoming a buildable lot, the applicant then constructed their single-family residential structure on the property, and it has remained as such since. So getting into the comprehensive plan analysis, won't go too much into detail on the steps, because Madeline did a good job of that in the previous hearing. But step one, it is a 5-step process to analyze the request to see the compliance with the comprehensive plan. Step one is looking at general development policies to see how developable this property is in terms of utilities, access, and looking at this property, the staff's findings and analysis is that access to the development would be from the proposed roundabout, which provides safe access to the site and increases overall safety along St. John Road. The size and scale of the mixed-use development would be compatible with nearby institutional uses along the St. John Road corridor, and would need to demonstrate adequate mitigation of adverse impacts to nearby residential properties. Water and sewer are available in the area and can be extended into this development, and lastly, water supply and pressure are adequate for the proposed development. So step 2 is compliance with the recommended land use plan. That is the recommended land use map on the left side of the screen. If you notice where the black arrow is pointing this to a blue area, the recommended land use map recommends this property as community facilities. This property is in the urban neighborhood west sub-area, which is our sub-area 8, and it is in a transition area with the suburban residential category. So as a community facility, they are recommended to allow for the location of essential public services serving the community as a whole. As this property is in a transition area with the adjacent suburban residential category, it would be appropriate to provide additional screening to minimize impacts on adjacent single-family uses. So staff's analysis for this specific step is the recommended land use map designates this property as community facilities and adjacent properties with suburban residential. The area is in a targeted planning area A, which calls for urban residential development. The addition of a roundabout on St. John Road greatly increases safety of access along St. John Road and justifies additional density and intensity of uses of the property. I do want to point out that special consideration should be given to potential adverse impacts of the nearby residential properties. Step 3 is compliance with the community-wide guidelines. So this just expands on step 1, so we take a more detailed look at this site regarding the development opportunities of this property. And it has different guidelines that we are supposed to look at. One of those is redevelopment emphasis. Staff found that the requested zoning map amendment supports redevelopment of an existing lot in an area with existing adequate utility infrastructure. The construction of a roundabout increases safety along St. John Road. B is scale and density. The size and scale of commercial and high-density residential development is compatible with uses on the opposite side of St. John Road. However, special consideration should be given to mitigation of adverse impacts of the nearby residential uses. Next is transition between land uses. The size and scale of commercial and high-density residential development is compatible with the uses on the opposite side of St. John Road. Again, however, special consideration should be given to the mitigation of adverse impacts on the nearby residential uses. Next is access management and vehicular connectivity. The construction of the roundabout at St. John Road will greatly increase safety along St. John Road and provide appropriate access to commercial and high-density residential developments. Pedestrian connectivity. Sidewalks will be required to be constructed along St. John Road and internal to this development. Also, construction of a roundabout on St. John Road will provide a safe pedestrian crossing across St. John Road for residents not just of this development, but also residential developments adjacent to this development to have access to the public park, the college campus, and the public library. Last part of step 3 is utilities. So again, for this, as mentioned previously, water and sewer are available to serve the property. Step 4 is compliance with the sub-area guidelines. So the sub-area guidelines provide additional analysis for this specific sub-area. And the 2 guidelines that are most applicable are compatible uses and also design guidelines. Commercial and high-density residential development is appropriate on this property as long as appropriate mitigation of adverse impacts is provided to the nearby residential properties. And also enhanced landscaping and screening should be considered to mitigate those adverse impacts to the nearby residential properties. The last step is compliance with the targeted planning area guidelines, and this property is in the targeted planning area A, where the black arrow is pointing. Targeted planning areas have been identified for areas needing more intensive analysis and guidance. Again, this one is in targeted planning area A, and it says that this area is currently undeveloped, but surrounded by suburban residential to the west and the north, and also natural areas to the east, and educational uses to the south. This area has adequate access for low to moderate density residential development. The area is in target planning area A, which calls for urban residential development. The addition of a roundabout on St. John Road greatly increases safety, of access along St. John Road and justifies additional density and intensity of uses of the property. Special consideration again should be given to potential adverse impacts of the nearby residential properties. So looking at this specific request for the zone change, staff does recommend approval of the zoning map amendment from R1 suburban residential to R6 high density residential and C3 regional commercial, as it is found to be in compliance with the community-wide development policies and guidelines, the recommended land use plan, the sub-area guidelines, and the target planning area guidelines of the Elizabethtown Comprehensive Plan, based on the findings provided in your packet. I'm not going to read the whereas statements, but I do want to read the first one because we do need to add something that was left out, so I want to make sure it gets on the record that we're adding these specific findings to the first whereas statement. So that first whereas statement says, whereas the Elizabethtown Planning Commission finds the proposed zoning map amendment from R1 suburban residential to R6 high density residential and C3 regional commercial complies with the envisioned Elizabethtown 2040 comprehensive plan. We do want to add in that it complies with specifically goal 2 of the comprehensive plan, which is community facilities, and that also is objective B, as in boy, which says the objective is to coordinate expansion of new infrastructure with the recommended land use plan to support redevelopment and new development opportunities. Also, goal 3, which is the transportation goal, specifically objective C, D, F, and G, and I'll read those. Objective C says to improve safety by focusing on upgrades of the highest priority intersections or corridors identified by the KYTC safety screening process. And one of those intersections listed is US 31W bypass and St. John Road. Objective D states that the objective is to improve the sidewalk network with a priority of high-use pedestrian areas that includes filling in sidewalk gaps, upgrading segments in disrepair, and connecting high-density residential areas to destinations such as grocery stores, schools, employment areas, and parks, as an example. Objective F is to explore and expand partnerships with other public, private, and nonprofit agencies to improve transportation services through a mobile platform in on-demand zones where services can be provided cost-effectively and in real time. And lastly, objective G is to coordinate all new development with the recommended land use plan to provide efficient movement of traffic, interconnected developments, and adequate right-of-way for future roadways, sidewalks, and trails to upgrade existing infrastructure. So, I do want to make sure that gets on the record that that is added to the first whereas. So then looking at the conceptual development plan, location and design for the roundabout does have preliminary approval by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet District 4 office. Required public improvement plans have not been submitted yet, but approval from the engineering department will be required. And also transition and screening techniques will be required as part of the actual development plan approval process. So staff does recommend approval of the conceptual development plan with 2 conditions. One is to install the roundabout as part of the development to mitigate traffic impacts and to increase pedestrian safety from this development, as well as the surrounding residential developments. And 2 is to provide enhanced screening and buffering on the west property line to mitigate visual and noise impacts to nearby residential uses. This landscape and screening plan shall receive approval from the Planning Commission when a new development plan is submitted for review.
Any questions of staff in the presentation of the commission?
Were we providing those updated whereas to this group here? Where can they find all that information you just articulated?
That is on our website. So the comprehensive plan, we download it on the website, elizabethtownky.org. At the top of the page, there's a departments and services tab. You can click that, go to planning and development. Halfway down the page, there's a hyperlink to access the comprehensive plan. It's on actually page 18 is where it starts. So 18 to 19 are those are the pages where
updated, or the updated staff findings is available somewhere on that page for anybody who has questions.
I mean, it will be in the minutes. What do you mean?
If it's in the minutes, then
Yeah,
that's where you can
yeah,
go.
we'll add it to the
and
minutes.
read that.
Any other questions of staff?
Is there a definition of community facilities?
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have to read it to me, but like broad strokes.
yeah. hold on a second. Have it pulled up. So the definition in the comprehensive plan for a community facility, so that a special land use category, it says the classification is provided to allow the location of essential public services, serving the community as a whole. This classification is applied to areas of, where existing users or uses falling within the criteria are currently located or where they will be located with a reasonable level of certainty in the future.
Any other questions? Aaron, I have a question regarding staff on your all's conversation, putting this thing together. So the conversation, obviously about the roundabout. So as we're considering this evening, though, it's a three-legged. There's not any provisions to close University Drive at this particular point, correct? Am I correct in that assumption?
Right, not at this time, because the property where University Drive will have to be realigned is actually owned by the Community Foundation. So as you know, they are a volunteer board, so for them to make a decision to either A, sell the property or dedicate right away, or sever their property and allow for the right away, it takes time for them to be able to make that decision. So they are aware of it. They have been in discussions with the city, with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, as well as with the developers. So they are working through that. At this time, my understanding is they have not agreed to do either sell the property completely to the developer or dedicate right away themselves, severing the property. My understanding is they have agreed to allow a very small portion of right of way to be obtained by the state to at least construct this small little portion of the roundabout to allow for the three legs to operate, but the fourth leg, that will happen at a later date.
And from a timing standpoint, there's construction going on out in that area now. So from a timing standpoint, should this particular project move forward, would that be a part of the existing construction that's going on now? Or
Yeah.
would it be coming later?
Nope, DLZ, which is the firm that is doing the design work for the state for St. John Road, they have been working with the applicant, working on the design for this roundabout. So I think the deadline for Scotty's, which is the contractor constructing St. John Road, to be able to fit this into the schedule for construction during their period of constructing St. John Road is June 1st. So and everything I understand is they're on target to hit that date to Scotty's, and if so, then Scotty's would be able to construct this roundabout during their initial construction phase going into Sunday. So they won't have to come back and rip up part of St. John Road they just finished, so.
Two more questions, at least. Under step one, the compliance with community-wide development policies, the staff analysis, point 2 says would need to demonstrate adequate mitigation of adverse impacts to nearby residential properties. Is that part of what you all are getting at in the screening and different things in the conceptual development plan,
Right,
basically?
so the second condition where we were, maybe it's the first.
Thanks.
Yeah, whichever the condition was, we talked about providing additional buffering screening, that would satisfy that second.
Okay. And then the clubhouse? What, I mean, is this like a private members club? The clubhouse language is, maybe that's a question more for the developer, but.
You'll need to probably ask that question.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Aaron. At this particular time, If the developer wishes to come forward and make a presentation based on the consideration this evening, now's the time to do that. Come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Thanks for having me. My name is Jay Park from Jay Park Architects. The address is 3850 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. But I am a licensed architect in the state of Kentucky. Just to kind of elaborate on some of the questions. Yes, we've been working very closely with the city for the past 6 months to the development. It's not single development, but it's more cohesively and mindful with the surrounding. So the introduction of the roundabout, we're happy to be part of, and also that will become our kind of entry road into our development. And then for future fourth leg connection to University Drive. So just to kind of give you detailed components of the building, the community amenity buildings. We have a retail, 15,000 square foot retail. We're assuming we all kind of F&B tenants. I think that's a great program components for the college students across the street, the Elizabethtown and the community college, that they can have access. And also a sort of entry from the 31 West to St. John Road. This is a kind of entry road. So I think that that retail component will be a nice welcoming building in terms of both daytime and nighttime, and for the neighbors nearby. And there's 4 segments, 2-story hotel buildings, and the reason we're kind of breaking up is so that we don't want the kind of mega scale or large scale that overwhelms this particular part of the land. That's why we're trying to disperse them, and then we will have plenty of buffers, landscape, and kind of open space that surrounds individual buildings as well as neighboring properties. And then the clubhouse. Clubhouse is, I know it sounds like exclusive, but it's open to general public. It's actually, it will function as a rather dual function as a check-in lobby where there will be an admin staff, restaurants, and then check-in desk, etc. Also some banquet functions for the private events as well as public events that can house various events for both public and private. And then, oops, where is that?
Aaron, you need to move back the slide there.
Yes, thank you. And then these 3, again, fragmented buildings along the northeast that way, so the east edge are the 2-story corporate housing. So that's where the R6 are separated along the driveway, and then the C3 facing the west. Now, in terms of kind of adverse impact to neighboring residential blocks, if you've ever been here, the natural topography is very severe, low to high, maybe to high as 20, 30 feet high. So all the buildings are situated to face the 31 West, and because the peak of the topography is along the edge, along with it, there's a huge, dense, mature trees. Any of the neighboring property would not see the building because these buildings are 2-story at the highest or single story, and they're somewhat buried into part of the slope. So, I doubt that the roof line would be visible from the west side of adjacent lots. And then pretty much going downhill, and all the buildings will be only visible from the 31 West. And yeah, I think in terms of skyline, roof line will be relatively blend in with the natural landscape and topography along the south and north direction. Yeah, I think if there's any questions, you can answer.
Commissioner, you have any questions?
Just with respect to the hotel itself, how many rooms are you proposing?
Yes, so we're proposing 114 guest rooms dispersed in four separate buildings. 114 guest rooms, and 15,000 square foot retail, which is single building, will be F&B. We assume there may be 3 to 5 different F&B tenants, with offering a variety of different menus and cuisines. And then the corporate housing are 126 units. They're all studio.
What's corporate housing?
Corporate housing is it's like a workforce housing. There's a kind of very controlled rent that can be afforded by average people who kind of works in the community. They're not luxury nor low income. They're kind of in the mid-market.
So the two buildings next to where you're planning the F&B, those are hotel buildings?
Yes.
Right, and then to the right of what would be, or the house, clubhouse, whatever, are those also part of the hotel as well?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and so the clubhouse is also a part of the hotel? You would go to there, check in, and then come out?
Mainly for hotel, yeah, you're exactly right. First they check in there, and then they have all the housekeeping kind of station there, including some meeting rooms, banquet facilities. But we intend to have all the single point of check-in and check-out at the clubhouse, or rather the hotel amenities.
Sure. So it's one hotel, just split up?
Correct.
Is
So
it
it's one off.
boutique style hotel, chain, like franchise hotel kind of thing? Do you know yet?
It's kind of too early to, but we're looking into that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking into
And then the lot in the back,
Yes.
is that as undevelopable, or is that future plans?
that. That's currently not, I mean, may not be a future phase 2, but I think for now we're going to focus on this development. It's already pretty overwhelming, so.
So there's no plans for that right now, but it's included in the zone change with the rest of the property, correct?
Yes, correct. Our intention is to, I'm still learning about the Elizabeth town and drove around quite a bit. I think any parcels along 31 West, I think proposed zoning is, I think, is kind of more compatible and take advantage of all the visual activities, figure activities, rather than R1. And I think this could be the development that could bring the energy on the other side of this part of Elizabeth Town into West 31 West. So I think proposed zoning of C3 and R6, the higher density, particularly along the 31 West, I think it makes a lot of sense than just one single house sitting on the 17-acre block.
So that back part is R6 though?
That would be, yes. Yes.
Are the trees existing that you all are highlighting as part of the buffer, is that on your property, or is that across?
Yes, they're within our properties. Yes.
Any other questions of the presenter, developer? Before you leave, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Do the audience have any questions of the developer at this particular time? Again, make it a question. Anybody have any questions?
So, question, just to,
Yeah. I'll need your name and your address, I'm sorry.
Brandon Henson.
Podium.
Brandon Henson, 1 San Diego Court, Jason up there. Just to verify, to the right, to the north, that's right now, there's no consideration for a phase 2 development of that.
Not at the moment.
Okay. As a council, so this is all, or can you break it up into zoning it later when that does
happens is this is a zone change for the entire property. So once the zone change, whatever happens with it, were to move forward, then you heard the development plan. The development plan comes back and tells us exactly what's going to go where. In this particular case, the development plan is showing just this part of it. They could come back later with the development plan and develop the back part. But it would have to be under the same zoning that would happen now. Unless they wanted to change the zoning again, and then we go through this again. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment.
Well, there's going to be a time for comments, so if they can question.
Clarify something.
Okay, that's fine, sure.
So you Thomas, my address is 717 St. John Road. You said this is going to be the hotel?
Yes.
Okay. My barn is right there behind that. These trees all are on my property. They're all on my property.
Understood. Sure.
Okay. Just want to clarify.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Dennis J. Dvorak, 597 Rue LeBron, Elizabethtown. Just listening to Mr. Park's presentation and listening to the presentation that was done by staff, we kind of glossed over the so-called corporate housing. It was said that, oh, this is going to be for people who live in the community. Everything that I read here, and personally knowing the Union family and knowing their work with Blue Oval SK, this development seems to me to be corporate housing for Blue Oval SK employees. The hotel is for visiting people who are coming in to work, et cetera, et cetera. The retail shops, that's an easy walk for the people who are living there for Blue Oval. So it seems to me that this is all a self-contained project to convenience Blue Oval. Am I mistaken, or is that correct?
So is your question, so what is your question?
My question is this a self-contained project, or are these corporate houses made specifically for Blue Oval employees?
It's not true. That's not.
So,
We'll be looking to.
but they could live there also, correct?
Yes.
All right, no further questions.
Are there any other questions of the presenter? Commission, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain anyone who wishes to come forward and speak in favor of the hearing this evening. Now's your time to come forward to the podium and speak in favor. We've already had a presentation, so it's basically a comment that you speak in favor that we should consider this evening. Okay, seeing none. So now we're going to shift. At this particular time, if someone would like to come forward and make a presentation as to why we should not consider a zone change this evening. I will remind you that we've had a presentation and I've asked that you state the facts and/or your particular reasoning behind that. So at this particular time, now's the time to make a presentation of why we should not consider that. And you go ahead, I'll call. State your name and address again. I'm sorry for the record.
My name is Celia Thomas. I live at 717 St. John Road. My property borders John and Hannah Newton's land. I have several concerns about this area being rezoned from residential to commercial. My first concern is the plan to assemble structures that are prefab modular buildings. That's what these buildings are going to be, prefab modular buildings. Elizabethtown is a beautiful city, and to think that as you come down the bypass from exiting off of I-65, one of the first things you will be seeing are 8 to 10 modular buildings that surround one of the largest residential homes in the area. What a terrible first impression of our city. My second concern is the issue of noise pollution for myself and my neighbors. It is my understanding that their home will be used for weddings, receptions, parties, clubhouse. I know from experience that the noise on this hill carries quite a distance. had a wedding reception in our yard in an enclosed tent right beside where the Young's home is. And the police have multiple calls concerning the noise. They came to our home 3 times to ask us to decrease the volume of the band. This was a one-time occurrence in our backyard. We're talking about multiple. Okay. My third concern is there will be light pollution. The hotel will be directly behind my barn. Even if they direct the lights straight down into the parking lot, there will still be a great deal of illumination on my property. My biggest concerns are safety and security. There are no barriers between our properties. And I have a large, deep pond and a playground swing set right below the Young's home. If a child were to get away from their parents, that would be the first place they would go, because you can see it from their home. And it would only be a matter of minutes before they could be in that water. I even hired someone the night of the wedding reception to guard the pond to prevent anything from happening. This constant worry would definitely affect my quality of life and should affect everyone's in Elizabethtown. There will also be traffic issues. I have seen many days when traffic towards the bypass is backed up past the Young's driveway. Even though they are widening St. John Road and requesting a roundabout, it's still going to be a hazardous place. There will be even greater increase in traffic due to the hundreds of apartments being built near GC Burkhead, just right out the road. I also know that anytime someone puts up any type of prefab modular buildings next to your property, that it quickly depreciates your property value. And no one wants that. If this were to pass, it would set a precedent for future modular buildings in our beautiful city of Elizabethtown. And I cannot imagine anyone wanting this to happen. And if any of you all live where I do, you would not want this either. Thank you for considering my concern.
Hang on just a second, we do have some questions for you, okay? Does the commission have any questions?
I haven't seen elevations, so I'd like to know what the prefab is that you're referring to. I've not seen any renderings or elevations that show what these buildings are going to look like.
Hannah came to me several weeks ago and told me that there would be no noise as far as the buildings, because she said they're going to be modular buildings. They're going to bring them in here and assemble them on the property.
You may need
Well,
communication from
yeah. So, the developer, sir, would you come up and address that question, please?
In our defense, there's a preconceived notion of the modular as like a trailer park. If some of it true, these are highly sophisticated, pure, factory setting, very clean design that actually aesthetically is very beautiful objects, buildings. Now, why we do it? Because we taking modular approach so that it minimizes any construction time on site, minimize any impact. All we have to regrade it and put a concrete slab, and then we'll be trucking into and they'll be stacked, the 2-story most of them. And it's not aesthetically, it's actually a very nice building than most of the on-site buildings. And they'll be kind of stacked repeatedly, so there's some efficiency of the construction time and overall able to control the cost of construction costs.
Do you have renderings or anything that we can?
We have, but they're outdated. Not that we. Is that something? I don't know.
Just staff.
The previous package. I don't know if they have any.
Try to answer this, but so I think and I've got. I think we have one back at the office. It wasn't submitted as part of this application. typically, I guess we can talk about looking at that. I would hesitate for the commission on any zoning change to approve a zoning change based on building renderings. When we get into a development plan phase, it's certainly relative because we go into the commercial design review standards that we have in the zoning ordinance. So it's not really advisable to take any action on the zoning change because of the type of building or how the building looks necessarily, because that can always change at the development plan stage. And since we're not really looking at a development plan, it may not be completely relative to talk about what the building may look like until we get to the development plan stage. I don't want to say it's completely irrelevant, but when we're looking at the zoning change, the concept plan, we're more so looking at how the zoning district fits into the property and the neighborhood, as opposed to the specific building.
Can you maybe address that indirectly? I mean, like, the larger 15,000 square foot building would be subject to commercial design guideline review?
Yeah,
Is that right?
hotel uses are not subject to commercial design review. Multifamily buildings or residential buildings are not subject to commercial design review in our zoning ordinance. If that's something the commission feels like needs to be warranted to justify a zoning change, that's maybe a conversation we could have, but it's not typically done that way.
And does the density of the R6, are we in that? And I guess maybe that's a development plan phase as well, because when you know the density, you know whether they have to add the amenities that some of our high-density residential requires.
Well, the whole thing is gonna be R6, right? So all that back half is gonna count towards the
The bottom
density.
half and the back. And sorry, and I'm Joe Becker from the Plan Development. I didn't mention that at the beginning. Yes, that's what the bottom half and onto the back is proposed as R6, and that top half in the front is proposed for commercial.
But to Kyle's point, the back half not being developed right now, that's gonna come into the calculation of the density of the R6.
Like if you cut it off like by the pond, that versus counting all the back half is gonna skew the density in one way or the other.
It could.
Yeah.
but
I mean,
it's
it
still-
would, it's not could, it's math.
Well, but it's how much land is available up there and the setbacks and providing the parking. I don't think if you did that you would exceed 20 units per acre that's permitted in R6, but that's something we could certainly look at. But yes, you are correct that having that back half part of the same property would factor into the calculation of the 20 units per acre, correct?
Commission, you satisfied with that?
Excuse me, I'd like to.
Hold on one second. Commission, you guys understand? So really that is part more of the development conversation rather than the zone consideration.
And if you feel like you need to see some of those, just let me know and we can have them here in a few minutes.
And fencing and barriers would also be included in the development plan discussion
Correct.
too.
And landscaping. Yes.
That are used to mitigate noise and light pollution issues.
And I think to Kyle's point, he was mentioning, when we talk about higher density residential, sometimes we are looking at enhanced amenities, things like that. So that's certainly a conversation relative to the zone.
Well, and just to clarify, what we've got, and we're talking about that, Ms. Thomas mentioned the trees are on her property, which is part of my question. So they would be required to add additional screening, those trees that are existing, if they're not on their property,
Do not count towards.
do not count towards their screening.
Correct.
Okay.
Great question. So, any other questions from the commission? Okay. Any
He was
other?
with the development team, I don't know if you had something relative to that
Sure.
conversation.
If you'd like to come up, what's your name and address?
Eric Silva, I'm the general contractor, 4011 Monterey Avenue, Rancho Mirage, California. I wanted to address Ms. Thomas about, to assure her about how modular buildings are built. It's just a method of construction, it isn't a design. The exterior of the building will look just like this one. It doesn't really impact, it's the way we build it. We build it inside of a room like this, put it together, then we get it in pieces. But the exterior of the building can look like anything you want. So it's not a modular or prefabricated home. It's just a style of building. It's a methodology of construction. I just wanted to let you know that the exterior appearance is not related to the construction.
Thank you. Does the commission have any other questions of Ms. Thomas? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward and make a presentation on why we should not be supporting this evening? Now's your time to come forward. State your name and address at the podium.
My name is Mary Jo Young. I live at 719 St. John Road, across from the library. This request for zoning change to high-density residential and commercial would severely impact our friends and neighbors and myself. Our one-family homes along St. John Road, Yellow Drive, Deer Grove Court, and Deer Creek Lane have all enjoyed the peace and tranquility of this residential area. If this change occurs, Bannon Shaw Trailhead and Shaw Creek will suffer. The seal of Elizabethtown is dominated by the image of a large, healthy tree as on the flag. We are known as a Tree City, USA. Trees soak up rainwater and add to the natural beauty of the area. Green Space is a non-profit organization for developing Elizabethtown's trail system and making it the first urban trail town. 37 miles of trails encompass Elizabethtown. The Bannon Shaw Trail is a particularly beautiful shaded trail built by the Boy Scouts in 2004. To access the trailhead, parking is available at the city's tennis court parking lot across from St. John Road to the Deerfield Hill subdivision and eventually to Rhineville Road. Walking, running, bird watching along these trails bring peace to our hearts. Should this high-density residential and C3 regional commercial be approved, Shaw Creek and Bannon Trail will be severely harmed. A check on the flood plan, watershed, and storm management will show you the danger of this proposed zoning change. This change would impact traffic to and from University Drive, the tennis court, baseball field, ETCT, and the Hardin County Library. 56 accidents have been recorded by the Elizabethtown Police since 2019 between the bypass and Ring Road. Elizabethtown citizens recognize and preserve the integrity and character of our residential neighborhoods and respect one another as friends and neighbors. Why anyone would want to change this paradise right here on earth, I cannot imagine. Sincerely yours, Mary Jo Young, 719 St. John Road, and I have a copy for you.
Thank you, Mrs. Young.
I'll take that.
Are there any questions?
Commission have any questions? No, not at this time. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and make a presentation regarding what we're considering this evening?
My name is Jim Shaw. I live at 616 Yale Drive. And Yale Drive is the first side street off St. John to the west of this property. And in fact, my property is about it's less than 1,000 feet from the Dean property. My neighbors and I have experienced noise and light pollution already from the bypass, so certainly we would be concerned about additional development like this occurring. I want to touch on a few of the issues brought up in the staff report. It was mentioned that the recommended land use map designates this property as community facilities and adjacent property suburban residential. There is language within the comprehensive plan that says these boundary lines are not exactly meant to be on a specific line, but the planning commission has the ability to determine where those boundaries fall. So I agree that this property can be split between suburban residential and community facilities. However, that's where I begin to disagree. Looking at the residential part first, the targeted planning area guidelines state that suburban residential is recommended, but the desired development pattern should reflect urban residential with the acknowledgement that the overall site density might be lower. However, what's being requested is high-density residential. In the comprehensive plan, the urban residential, which is recommended here, has a density range of 5 to 12 units per acre, and that would equate to R5 zoning. So the R6 zoning is not supported by the plan. And as you know, the targeted planning area guidelines are the most specific as they are prepared just for a small area. So those are the guidelines that should be relied upon the heaviest as you evaluate the request. Turning to the C3 zoning, it gets a little bit confusing in the staff report, but the staff at times uses the community facilities designation as justification for the commercial uses, and I feel that it's wrong. And I appreciate Mr. Sawyer-Rett bringing up that question about community facilities. The definition is not specific in the comprehensive plan, certainly not what I would like to see it. But if you look throughout other parts of the plan, the term is used in other places and it gives actual examples. And I will not run through all of them, but I will give you a few just to, so that you can get the general idea. In sub-area 5, under existing land use and character, there's the sentence that says multiple institutional uses or community facilities exist in this area, including Freedom Lake, Worcestertown High School, TK Stone Middle School, and other facilities such as churches. In sub-area 6, targeted planning area A there includes the sentence, community facilities such as a convention center or meeting facility could also be appropriate in this area with proper infrastructure improvements. Sub-area 13, under planning issues and opportunities, it includes the sentence, community facilities and amenities are needed to serve industries such as walking paths and parks. And for sub-area 8, the sub-area that this property is located in the existing land use and character section, it states in part, this area is primarily suburban residential, but it has community facilities that include Elizabethtown Community Technical College, Western Kentucky University E-Town, the Early College and Career Center, Central Kentucky Community Foundation, and Hardin County Public Library. So clearly, those are not general commercial uses that are being proposed here. And if you look at the recommended land use map itself, you will see that properties designated as community facilities include the Elizabethtown Airport, the Nature Park, the City Cemetery, the property that we are on right now, as well as numerous school properties. So again, community facilities currently is not a designation intended for commercial uses. Another concern is that in step 4 of the staff analysis, the report mentions some guidelines that would apply to all of sub-area 8. And one of them is that some circumstances could justify other compatible uses to serve the daily needs of residents or to accommodate agricultural businesses. And then under that, neighborhood commercial or neighborhood services may be appropriate at major intersections or along major arterials and collectors to serve the surrounding homes as long as the businesses provide an adequate transition between uses. The staff report doesn't state specific circumstances that justify the commercial uses in this case, unless it's landscaping and a roundabout, which is the only connection I can make there. Since I had a little bit of involvement in the development of the plan, I will say that when the plan was written, the circumstances necessary to justify commercial zoning in these cases were thought to be much more substantial than what is being proposed here. Again, as I mentioned, the targeted planning area guidelines are the guidelines that should be relied upon most heavily because they are specific to this property. In this case, they only discuss suburban and urban residential development. There's no mention of commercial development, and really isn't any mention of community facilities in the targeted planning area. So my contention is that the comprehensive plan does not support either R6 or C3 zone on this property, and I urge you to adhere to the plan and recommend that the council deny the request.
Does the commission have any questions of Mr. Shaw?
Are you going to submit those notes to the public, or do you mind? Or
I could send them later, they're not clean notes.
Thank you.
Does the audience have any questions of Mr. Shaw? Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward and make a presentation this evening? One more call. Anybody else want to come forward? Okay, seeing none at this particular time, then I'm going to close.
I can say you're closing this evening's, you all are open to discussion.
No, I know.
That's fine. My advice would be to table this until we can provide that notice to that one property owner and then reconvene. Everyone would be invited back for that. We would decide tonight, correct, Joe, when that future date would be so that everyone could, you can return. We wouldn't expect a repeat.
I think it would be advisable to have some discussion and a conversation when we have all these people here.
Right, I think, given that the public's here, again, I would advise against taking the vote until we get that notice issue taken care of with one owner. But
we could have
you can have discussion, and if that prompts some further comment and interaction with the public, that's fine too.
All right.
But
We do want to point out that in the file, Steve,
I was going to read that.
there is another letter that
Okay.
we received in opposition, so before we move past that, we do want to.
sure.
Before I close, I have a record of a letter that from a Mr. Matt Miranda says, I'm writing to express my strong opposition to the proposed zoning map amendment for 707 St. John, which would change the zoning from R1 to R6 and also C3 regional. As a nearby resident, I'm deeply concerned about the impact the change would have on the character and safety of the neighborhood. Current R1 zoning supports a quiet family-oriented environment. A shift to high-density residential and commercial use would bring significant increased traffic, noise, and congestion to an area that is not designed to handle such volume. The change also raises concerns about decreased property values and the loss of green space and privacy for existing homeowners. I respectfully urge the Planning Commission to consider the long-term implications of this amendment on the surrounding community and to preserve the integrity of our residential neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration. Again, that's Matt Miranda, 111 Deer Grove Court. And I'll put that in as a part of the record. So,
I do have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Of staff. Do you know in the, Aaron or Joe, do you all know with the roundabout that's proposed, the size of the roundabout? And the reason I ask is because of agricultural implements and farm machinery that goes through that area and making sure that is adequate for the, that use.
Any other questions? Okay, again, I'm going to close the testimony part of the hearing, and if the commission would like to discuss this evening, again, reminding you that no action will be taken tonight, but if you'd like to discuss what you've heard, now's the time to kind of do that. Now, Matt, we'll have a chance to do that again, correct?
Yes, again.
So,
What I would anticipate is we would continue this to a future date, provide the notice to that neighbor. We would then reopen the hearing, and we wouldn't want duplicative comments, but comments could continue, deliberations could continue. And you all are ready to make a decision, we can do that at the next meeting.
Just for point of clarification, is that notice required for the day?
No, 14 days.
Okay.
Correct.
I would encourage you to maybe have some conversation while you have everybody here. If
Right.
there's any questions that you have with opposition or the applicant or anybody, go ahead and have it. Just stop short of a motion.
My question is about the next date. I'm not here on April 15th, but also recognize Maurice is not here. So how will we decide
This is not
It-
tonight? And he could possibly be here and upon watching this video. I just want to make sure I'm understanding all that.
by rule, he would have to watch the video in its entirety and then come and be here for that. It's the only way you can do that, correct, Matt?
Correct. And it's up to this body to determine the next date. So if you didn't want to do the 15th, I'm saying to the full commission, the date you select, I would recommend to make it as quick a date as you can, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, the next available dates are April 8th and 22nd.
April 8th and 22nd.
I will not be here today if that has any bearing on that.
And I will not be here on the 8th.
So we're looking at the 22nd at this point, right?
Like maybe you still have forums on the 8th.
Yeah, we can still have a quorum, that's true.
With the assumption that Maurice watches the video.
That's true. So Commissioner, you all want to talk about what you've heard this evening? Any comments, thoughts, concerns about what you've seen? I'll yield to you at this time.
I still have a question on, we can ask questions of staff here. I still have a question on the remaining acreage, what size that parcel is. That's
Green
not being
space?
developed at this time. Do we
Maybe
have
a better question for the applicant.
Yeah, so total 17 acres, and we're proposing the C3 about 1/3, 6-ish. I don't have the exact number, apologize. And the remaining R6 would be about 11.
I get that, but from the pond to the undeveloped portion, what size is that remaining parcel?
I see. I'll say about 40% of entire 17 acres, so 8 acres. Yeah, 7 or 8.
You got to count the pond.
Or probably, since it's tapers that way, maybe it's lower than 7, like 6-ish.
Okay, that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. What's your thoughts here?
I think my biggest thing is we are keeping this open, so I'm not making any assumed for or against this, because there could still be meaningful information shared. I do find it interesting, it is C3 that is adjacent to R1. Even though the whole space has different one, the R6 seems to not be adjacent and the current development where it's down by the road. So that doesn't seem very typical to put the commercial right up against. It's not that it doesn't happen, but it's just not typical.
Well, there is a lot going on with this particular development. I think some of my concerns are the traffic. I know that that traffic backs up from that bypass back there, and if you're gonna keep University Drive open, I don't care if you do have a roundabout, that's gonna create some serious issues. And what else is around there based on what I see in front of me, I'm not so sure that it fits personally, but again, I'm not making any decision tonight, but you know, you got the foundation has to do something with their land to make that connect. That would make it a little more palatable, but still, there's a lot going on with this particular project that, aside from traffic, aside from noise, aside from screening, you've got other development that you're gonna have down the road. It's just, there's a lot going on there. But I've got some serious concerns with the traffic and the access to that particular project. And, you know, you mentioned the commercial there. You know, we talk about mixed use, but this is a little bit different because it's backing right up to everything around there, probably one except for the college. So, you know, it's kind of a lot going on. So I think we need to consider it very seriously what we do with this property as we move forward. And certainly we're not going to take any action tonight, but I'd like to hear from the rest of you whether you have the same thoughts or if there's other things. You don't have to, but I mean, that's the things that I see.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're considering the zone change at this point, but I think as part of that, I counted 1, 2, 3, at least 4 places in the staff's analysis for the recommendation of some language around demonstrating need of mitigation for the adverse impacts of nearby residential properties, which somewhat gets to what Casey was talking about with putting the C3 right next to the R1. The roundabout adding with this would add more traffic onto an already congested road, like you said. And then as well, I mean, looking at the comprehensive plan, you know, I brought up the point about the community facilities, but then as well, as it's pointed out in step 5, you know, the target area A, you know, this is not exactly what it's calling for there. And you know, our job is to kind of uphold or look at and make decisions based upon the comprehensive plan there. And I believe you, Joe, on the video proof of the roundabout, but that's as well a concern for me. Again, just with knowing the agricultural equipment that rolls through there pretty consistently and pretty soon, if not already, I think that's a concern of mine, certainly. So.
I do have a question for staff. In the event that there is traffic buildup coming toward the bypass, the logical thing would be people cutting through University and then going through ECTC's college, which really isn't a cut through.
But they do that now.
Yeah, they do that now regularly. So would there, I mean, that would be a significant issue from my point of view. Does that concern the city at all? Was that taken into consideration?
It would take a lot of effort for somebody to get through on University Drive and get out of the bypass.
Oh, for sure.
I was trying to understand the question.
And maybe I just do this for baseball, and sorry if I'm a horrible person.
To come through University Drive to get to College Street?
Yeah, University Drive, then you go around by the Fire Training Center to College Street.
Would it be a concern of ours for people to make that cut through, or?
Yes, when the backup will take place, as kids are leaving EC3 in particular at that time frame, because they're going to do a lot of cut through.
As opposed to them coming out on the St. John Road?
Yes.
Okay. That's not really a concern of ours. Right now, we have a concern with the existing location of University Drive as well as the state does. I think we share the concern of the state that we would like University Drive to move further away from the bypass. That's not necessarily proposed with this, but this kind of helps with that potential realignment of University Drive. We're not really concerned with whether or not people have to leave ECTC or EC3 towards St. John Road or
CKCF might not approve it, correct?
They have indicated that they would. They've already given preliminary approval for a small portion of that. I think it's like maybe an acre or so of ground as for construction of the roundabout. I don't want to speak for them, but I mean, there has been conversations that they are open to that discussion of realigning University Drive. I mean, there's no commitments made or financial obligations with anyone or anything like that, but they've said, and I was secondhand speaking here, but they have said that they're open to potential realignment and working with someone that someone else pays for it. It's not their problem, so we don't expect them to pay for it.
Is the roundabout dependent on this development? Like, the roundabout's not going there just to go there, right? Like, the state has no plans for this outside of this
It
development?
would only go there for this development.
And would the developer pay for the roundabout?
Yes, state's paying for the roundabout.
Yes.
State's paying for the roundabout.
The developer or the state?
Developer would pay for it.
Developer,
Developer.
For the roundabout?
yes.
Okay.
I will say, on a positive note, I do like the idea of the mixed use and mixing in the hotels and the food and beverage and all of that. And I'd like to see more of that. It's kind of self-contained. I know we, in the city, where you have residential shopping, even, grocery shopping, all of that inside the city, as a, positive for the proposal at least, from the conceptual design part. Again, we're talking about zoning specifically, but.
Yes, sir.
The question was raised about what the plan actually supports, R5 versus R6. What's the difference in the densities allowed now?
R6 that's proposed allows up to 20 dwelling units per acre, and R5 allows up to 12 dwelling units per acre.
That's the difference. 12, 20. Any other comments?
The other thought I have is just the massive amount of R6 we've